The hang snatch is a variation of the power snatch in which an athlete holding the bar with a wide grip at waist height jumps and pulls the bar into an overhead position. The movement requires quadruple extension of the ankles, knees, hips, and spine, as well as overhead shoulder stability. The hang snatch is a movement used to train explosivity and quadruple extension in the frontal plane, along with the longitudinal or vertical axis. The movement consists of a jump, shrug, high pull, turnover, catch, and recovery phase. The scapulothoracic joint, or the shoulder girdle, consists of two joints, the sternoclavicular and the acromioclavicular. The sternoclavicular joint is a saddle, or sellar joint, while the acromioclavicular is a gliding, or arthrodial joint. The articulating bones that make up these joints are the scapula and the clavicle. During the jump shrug phase, the arms of the athlete remain fully locked out. The athlete will dip, hinge, and jump vertically, shrugging the shoulders at the top of the jump. During the jump shrug, the muscles of the shoulder girdle, which include the levator scapulae, upper and middle trapezius, and the rhomboids, contract concentrically in order to elevate the shoulders. During the high pull phase, in which the athlete will pull the elbows upward and backward, these muscles contract isometrically to maintain elevation of the shoulder, while the pectoralis minor contracts concentrically to retract the shoulder girdle. During the turnover phase, in which the athlete will rotate the arms underneath the bar and punch upward, elevation and retraction are maintained, while the serratus anterior and the rhomboids contract concentrically to cause downward rotation of the shoulder girdle. During the catch phase, in which the athlete catches the bar in a locked-out overhead position, retraction is maintained by the isometric contraction of the middle trapezius and the rhomboids, while the lower trapezius and pectoralis minor contract concentrically to depress the shoulder. During the recovery phase, in which the athlete will come to a standing position with the bar overhead, the isometric contraction of the middle trapezius, rhomboids, lower trapezius, and the pectoralis minor maintains shoulder girdle retraction and upward rotation until the bar is dropped from the overhead position.
The glenohumeral joint, or the shoulder joint, is classified as a multi-axial ball and socket joint, or anarthrodial. The articulating bones that make up this joint are the humerus, clavicle, and scapula. During the jump shrug, the shoulder joint muscles, which include the supraspinatus, upper pectoralis major, and deltoid, contract concentrically to abduct the arms, while the anterior deltoid, upper pectoralis major, and coracobrachialis contract concentrically in order to flex the arms. During the high pull phase, these muscles contract concentrically in order to pull the arms up, while the infraspinatus and teres minor contract concentrically in order to externally rotate the arms. During the turnover phase, the supraspinatus, upper pectoralis major, and deltoid contract concentrically to abduct the arms, while the anterior deltoid, upper pectoralis major, and coracobrachialis contract concentrically to keep flexion. The infraspinatus and teres minor also contract concentrically to further externally rotate the arms. During the catch phase, abduction is maintained by the concentric contraction of the supraspinatus, upper pectoralis major, and deltoid, while the latissimus dorsi, teres major, lower pectoralis major, and posterior deltoid contract concentrically in order to extend the arms over the athlete's head. The infraspinatus and teres minor contract concentrically to maintain external rotation. During the recovery phase, the supraspinatus, upper pectoralis major, and deltoid isometrically contract to keep the arms abducted overhead, while the latissimus dorsi, teres major, lower pectoralis major, and posterior deltoid also contract isometrically to keep the arms extended overhead until the bar is dropped.
There are three types of joints in the elbow joint: the humeral ulnar and radiohumeral, which are classified as gingimus type joints, and whose articulating bones consist of the humerus, radius, and ulna. The third type of joint is the radial ulnar, which is classified as a trochlear type joint, which articulating bones consist of the radius as well as the ulna. Now moving on to the elbow joint. Throughout the jump shrug phase, the triceps brachii and acromius perform a concentric extension at the elbow joint. Now the brachioradialis, pronator teres, and pronator quadratus perform pronation throughout all phases. Now, this type of contraction is isometric, so the hands are pronated and are able to hold the bar and maintain it stable. Now, in the hypophase, the biceps brachii, brachialis, brachioradialis, and the pronator teres perform a concentric flexion at the elbow joint. Now, the brachioradialis and pronator teres, as well as the pronator quadratus, also perform an isometric pronation. Now, during the turnover phase, the biceps brachii, brachialis, brachioradialis, and the pronator teres also perform flexion at the elbow joint. Now, this type of contraction is a concentric due to the bending of the elbow. Now, pronation is also occurring isometrically due to the brachioradialis, pronator teres, and pronator quadratus. Now, in the catch phase, the triceps brachii and acromius extend at the elbow joint. Now, this type of contraction is also a concentric, and the brachioradialis, pronator teres, and pronator quadratus isometrically pronate. In the recovery phase, the triceps brachii and acromius concentrically extend at the elbow joint, and the brachioradialis, pronator teres, and pronator quadratus are also isometrically pronated.
The wrist joint consists of the radius, ulna, and the carpals. The wrist joint is a condylar joint. The hand then consists of the metacarpal joint, which is a saddle joint. Each finger then has three joints: the metacarpophalangeal joint, the proximal interphalangeal joint, and the distal interphalangeal joint. The metacarpophalangeal joint is a condylar joint, the proximal interphalangeal is a hinge joint, and the distal interphalangeal is a hinge joint. The articulating bones that make up the joints are the radius, ulna, and the carpals, as well as the trapezium and the first metacarpal. During the jump shrug phase, the wrist of the athlete remains fully locked out. The athlete will remain fully extended while jumping vertically on the jump. The muscles of the wrist include the extensor carpi radialis, extensor carpi ulnaris, flexor digitorum superficialis, and the flexor digitorum profundus, which contract concentrically in order to keep the wrist and hand neutral. During the hypophase, in which the athlete will go into full extension, these muscles contract isometrically to keep the wrist and hand neutral, while the flexor carpi radialis, flexi carpi ulnaris, and the palmaris longus flex the wrist. During the turnover phase, in which the athlete will rotate the wrist and punching straight up behind the neck while sitting in a squat position, the extensor carpi radialis and the extensor carpi ulnaris will contract concentrically to cause extension in the hand and wrist. During the catch phase, in which the athlete will catch the bar in the overhead position and the arms being fully extended out, extension is maintained by the concentric contraction by the extensor carpi radialis and the extensor carpi ulnaris. During the recovery phase, the athlete will stand straight up with the bar overhead in the concentric contraction of the extensor carpi radialis and the extensor carpi ulnaris while maintaining extension in the wrist and the hand until the bar is not in an overhead position.